Let me describe something to you, and tell me if it sounds familiar. You fall asleep just fine. You're tired, you drift off, no trouble at all. But then, in the small hours of the morning, somewhere around 3 or 4 o'clock, your eyes snap open. The house is silent, it's pitch dark, and you are wide awake. You lie there. You look at the clock. You tell yourself to go back to sleep. But your mind starts turning. The worries creep in, and the more you try to force yourself back to sleep, the more awake you feel. And then, just as dawn approaches and you finally start to drift off again, it's time to get up, and you begin the day already exhausted. If this happens to you, night after night, I want you to know 2 things right away. You are not alone. This is one of the most common sleep complaints in older adults, and there is a real, understandable reason it happens. Now, here's what I want you to understand from the start, because it will take away a lot of the worry. Waking in the night as we age is, to a large degree, normal. Our sleep genuinely changes as we get older, and a brief awakening is not, in itself, a sign that anything is wrong. But, and this matters, whether that awakening turns into an hour of frustrated tossing and turning depends enormously on a few things you can actually control, and occasionally, waking at 3 in the morning can be a sign of something worth addressing, like anxiety, a breathing problem in sleep, or low mood. So, today I'm going to explain why you wake at 3 a.m., why it happens at that hour in particular, the common and the more important causes, exactly what to do to get back to sleep and to sleep more soundly, and when this pattern is worth talking to your doctor about. And there's one particular mistake almost everyone makes when they wake in the night that actually keeps them awake, so make sure you stay with me for that. Because fixing it changes everything. Let me start with what's actually happening, because understanding it is genuinely reassuring. Sleep is not one solid block of unconsciousness. All night long, you cycle through stages, light sleep, deep sleep, and dreaming sleep, in cycles of about 90 minutes. And between these cycles, everyone, at every age, briefly comes up toward the surface of wakefulness. When you're younger, you usually pass through these brief awakenings without even noticing, and fall straight back down into sleep. But as we age, several things change. Our sleep becomes lighter and more fragmented. We spend less time in the deep, restorative stages, and we wake more easily and more fully at those natural transition points. So those brief awakenings that a younger person sleeps right through become full eyes-open awakenings for an older adult. This is a normal part of how sleep changes with age, not a disease. On top of that, the timing of your sleep shifts with age. Many older adults develop what's called an advanced sleep phase, meaning their whole sleep clock moves earlier, they get sleepy earlier in the evening, and they naturally wake earlier in the morning. So, if you're nodding off at 8 or 9 in the evening, then by 3 or 4 a.m., you may simply have had a good 6 or 7 hours of sleep, and your body thinks it's nearly morning. So, the fundamental reason you wake at 3 a.m. is that aging makes your sleep lighter and more easily interrupted, and often shifts your sleep timing earlier, so a natural between-cycle awakening becomes a full one, and your body may already feel it's had enough sleep. Now let me explain why it's so often that specific 3 to 4 a.m. window, because that puzzles everyone. Why 3 or 4 in the morning so reliably? There are good reasons. First, the deepest, most solid sleep happens in the first half of the night. By the second half, in the early morning hours, your sleep is naturally lighter and richer in dreaming sleep, so you're much closer to the surface and far easier to wake. Second, your body has an internal clock that governs hormones and temperature, and in those early morning hours, your body temperature is at its lowest and beginning to rise, and your stress hormone, cortisol, which helps wake you for the day, begins climbing in the early hours. This natural pre-dawn rise in cortisol can tip a lightly sleeping older adult into full wakefulness. Third, if you have anything on your mind, any stress or anxiety, that rising cortisol combined with the silence and stillness of the night is the perfect setup for your worries to come flooding in. So, that 3 to 4 a.m. wake-up sits right at the meeting point of your lightest sleep, your rising cortisol, and your lowest body temperature, which is exactly why it's such a common hour to find yourself staring at the ceiling. Now, let me walk you through these specific causes, because beyond the normal changes, several are worth knowing. The first and most common contributor beyond normal aging is simply spending too long in bed, or going to bed too early. If you go to bed at 9 and you only truly need 7 hours of sleep, you will naturally wake around 4, wide awake, because you've had your sleep. Lying in bed for 9 or 10 hours hoping for solid sleep actually fragments it. The second common cause is needing to pass urine, which is extremely common after 60. And the problem is often not the trip itself, but the struggle to fall back asleep afterward. The third, and a big one, is anxiety and stress. A busy or worried mind is the great enemy of the early morning, and for many people, the 3 a.m. wake-up is really an anxiety wake-up, the mind seizing on the quiet to churn through worries. The fourth cause is alcohol. A drink in the evening may help you fall asleep, but as your body processes it in the early hours, it causes a rebound awakening and lighter, more broken sleep in the second half of the night. So that evening drink is a classic cause of the 3 a.m. wake-up. The fifth is caffeine too late in the day, which lingers in the body for many hours and lightens your sleep. The sixth is your sleep environment, a room that's too warm, too light, or noise that disturbs you during those light sleep hours. And the seventh, which I'll come back to, includes a few medical causes worth knowing about: pain that worsens at night, breathing problems in sleep, and low mood. So, beyond normal aging, the common culprits are too much time in bed, nighttime bathroom trips, anxiety, evening alcohol, late caffeine, and the sleep environment, most of which are very much within your control. But let me flag the more important causes now, because a couple of them genuinely matter. Let me highlight 3 medical causes worth taking seriously. The first is sleep apnea, a condition where your breathing repeatedly pauses during sleep, common in older adults, and it can jolt you awake, often with a gasp, a choke, or a racing heart. And it's frequently accompanied by loud snoring, which a partner may notice, and by daytime tiredness despite time in bed. Sleep apnea is hard on the heart and the whole body, and it's very treatable, so it's worth identifying. The second is depression or significant low mood. This is important because early morning waking in the small hours, and being unable to get back to sleep, along with low mood, loss of interest, or a heavy, hopeless feeling, is one of the classic patterns of depression, which is common and very treatable in older adults and too often missed. And the third is pain or other physical conditions that disturb sleep. So, while most 3 a.m. waking is the ordinary, manageable kind, waking with gasping or choking and loud snoring points to sleep apnea, early waking with persistent low mood can point to depression, and both deserve a doctor's attention. Now, let me get to the heart of it. What to actually do, starting with the single most important change. Here is the most important thing I can tell you, and it's the mistake almost everyone makes. When you wake at 3 a.m. and can't get back to sleep, do not lie there in bed, awake, watching the clock, and getting more and more frustrated. This is the single biggest trap, because when you lie in bed awake and anxious, your brain begins to associate your bed with being awake, frustrated, and worried, which trains you to stay awake there, and the frustration itself raises your alertness and makes sleep impossible. So, here is what the sleep experts actually recommend, and it works. If you've been awake for what feels like about 20 minutes and sleep isn't coming, get up, leave the bed, go to another room, keep the lights dim, and do something calm and boring. Read something light, listen to quiet music or a gentle program. Sit quietly until you feel genuinely sleepy again, and only then return to bed. This breaks the cycle of lying there anxious, and it retrains your brain to associate the bed with sleep. And crucially, don't stare at the clock. Turn it away from you, because clock watching and calculating how little sleep you're getting fuels the very anxiety that keeps you awake. Now, let me give you the other measures which prevent the waking in the first place. First, keep a consistent sleep schedule, going to bed and getting up at the same times every day, including weekends, which is one of the most powerful things for stabilizing your sleep. And resist the urge to go to bed too early. If you're waking at 3, try going to bed a bit later, so your sleep is more consolidated. Second, get bright light in the morning, ideally daylight, which anchors your body clock and helps prevent the too early shift, and get some light and activity during the day. Third, be careful with naps, since long or late naps steal from your night's sleep. So if you nap, keep it short and early. Fourth, watch the evening inputs. Avoid caffeine from the afternoon onward, avoid or limit alcohol, which is a major cause of early waking, and don't drink a lot of fluid in the last couple of hours before bed to reduce bathroom trips. Fifth, Build a calming wind-down routine before bed, and keep your bedroom cool, dark, and quiet, since a cooler room supports sleep and darkness keeps you under. Sixth, address the anxious mind. Because for so many people that's the real issue, try writing down your worries and a small plan for them earlier in the evening so they're not waiting to ambush you at 3 a.m. And use calming, slow breathing, or relaxation if you wake, rather than fighting to sleep. And seventh, don't reach for alcohol as a sleep aid, and don't start sleeping pills on your own, since many, especially in older adults, carry real risks including next-day grogginess and falls. So, any sleep medication should be discussed with your doctor. So, the plan is, get out of bed if you can't sleep, rather than lying there frustrated. Keep a steady schedule, don't go to bed too early, get morning light, mind your naps, caffeine, and alcohol, keep the room cool and dark, and settle the anxious mind. Together, these genuinely transform the 3 a.m. wake-up for most people. Now, let me be clear about when this is a reason to see your doctor, because knowing this helps you act wisely. See your doctor if your sleep problem is persistent and is genuinely affecting your days, leaving you exhausted, foggy, low, or struggling to function, because chronic insomnia can and should be helped, often without medication, through the very approaches I've described, which a doctor or sleep specialist can guide. See your doctor promptly if you wake gasping or choking, or you're told you snore loudly and stop breathing, or you're sleepy in the daytime despite time in bed, because that points to sleep apnea, which is important to treat. And please see your doctor if your early morning waking comes with persistent low mood, loss of interest or pleasure, hopelessness, or heavy sadness, because that can be depression, which is common, treatable, and worth addressing, and never something to simply endure. So, ordinary, occasional waking that responds to good sleep habits is usually fine, but persistent insomnia harming your days, waking with gasping and snoring, and early waking with low mood all warrant seeing your doctor. Let me paint you a picture of how this so often turns around. Picture a woman in her 70s who's been waking at 3:30 every morning, lying there for 2 hours, frustrated and worried, then dragging through her days exhausted. She'd been going to bed at 8:30 out of boredom, having a glass of wine in the evening and clock watching every time she woke. She makes a few changes. She pushes her bedtime to 10 so her sleep is more consolidated. She stops the evening wine. She turns her clock to the wall and, crucially, when she wakes and can't fall back asleep, instead of lying there fuming, she gets up, sits in her armchair with a dull book under a dim light, and returns to bed only when she's sleepy. Within a couple of weeks, the 3:30 wake-ups are shorter and less frequent, and even when she does wake, she no longer dreads it, so she falls back asleep more easily. What had felt like a hopeless affliction turned out to be very much within her power to change. And let me speak briefly to those of you caring for or close to an older person. If a loved one complains of waking in the night, you can reassure them that some night waking is a normal part of aging and needn't be feared, while helping them with the good habits, a consistent schedule, not going to bed too early, morning light, limiting evening alcohol and caffeine, and getting up to sit quietly rather than lying awake frustrated. And you can watch for the signs that need a doctor: loud snoring with gasping and daytime sleepiness, which suggests sleep apnea, and early waking with low mood or loss of interest, which can signal depression, and gently encourage them to seek help, since both are common and very treatable. Let me draw this all together. Waking at 3 or 4 in the morning is extremely common after 60, and it's largely because aging makes our sleep lighter and more easily interrupted, and often shifts our sleep timing earlier. So a natural between-cycle awakening becomes a full one, right at the hour when our sleep is lightest and our waking hormones are rising. Most of it is normal and manageable, and made worse by too much time in bed, evening alcohol, late caffeine, anxiety, and above all, by lying there awake and frustrated. So here's what I'll leave you with. First, understand that some night waking is a normal part of aging, not a sign of something wrong, which takes away much of the fear. Second, and most important, never lie in bed awake and frustrated. If sleep won't come, get up, sit somewhere calm and dim until you're sleepy, and don't watch the clock. Third, prevent the waking by keeping a steady schedule, not going to bed too early, getting morning light, and limiting naps, caffeine, and especially evening alcohol. Fourth, settle the anxious mind with an evening worry plan and calm breathing rather than fighting for sleep. and keep your room cool and dark. And fifth, see your doctor if the problem is persistent and wearing you down. If you wake gasping with loud snoring, which suggests sleep apnea, or if you wake early with low mood, which can signal depression, since all of these can be helped. Waking at 3 a.m. can feel lonely and endless, but it's usually a normal, understandable, and very manageable part of aging, and knowing how to respond changes everything. So, take care of yourself, treat your sleep with patience rather than a fight, and reach out for help with the patterns that call for it. And because persistent insomnia, sleep apnea, and low mood all benefit from a doctor's guidance, please treat sleep that's harming your days, or waking with gasping or with low mood, as your reason to see your own physician, rather than simply enduring exhausted night after exhausted night. If this helped you, please give it a like and subscribe, because I share this kind of calm, practical guidance for older adults, and I'd love for you to keep watching with me.